Hello, today's video is about podcasts. I have been wanting to make this, I just looked at my notebook, since the 15th of March 2019. So that's more than a year. And I think what happened was I kept intending to film this video, then I didn't. And then it got to a point where it was too far since I'd listened to a podcast, or specifically any of these, I'm not sure. And then I just never made it again. So here we are, a year and a half later. Not quite, but making a video about podcasts. Okay, I'm just gonna start it off by reading my notes from the 15th of March and then I will continue into present day. So I only realised podcasts were free on the 13th of March. So I was pretty late to the game, considering I think podcasts have been going for quite a while. And I didn't realise how I could get them or anything, and then I realised eventually you could just download Apple Podcasts or whatever it's called, and that was it. It was so easy. You didn't even need to sign up for anything or do anything or give your credit card, which I always hate when they ask for that. So that was great. So as soon as I found out about that, the first thing I did was look up Carrie, because I knew that she had just recently started it. And I listened to it. It was very different to what I was expecting, not at all what I was thinking. And a little note I've written here is wondering why Celinda doesn't pronounce her name the way I would. I don't even remember. It's probably that she says Schoenmaker or something, and I would say Schoenmaker. But it could also just be that she's made it simpler for the audience. So once I did that, I looked up worthy podcasts. That's what I searched into Google. The first one that came up was called Wild Thing. I looked it up and read what it was about, but I didn't love the look of it, so I just skipped it and went on to the next. My friends. The next one I stumbled upon was called Dr. Death. At first I was a little bit unsure about it, but it was so good. It was very well presented, except the ads. There were some ads that were just bang in the middle of a sentence and they really annoy me. But it was just so thrilling and compelling, and it just made you want to keep listening, and it was just so good. But I should warn, it can be gory at times, especially the first episode I've written down, but I don't know why. And I also didn't realise how recent it was, which also just adds, and the fact, obviously I did know that it was truthful, but it just adds to the scary nature of it when you realise it's so recent. But what I haven't written here, but what did happen, which I loved, was that a couple of weeks after I listened to everything, because I just listened to it all in I think maybe 2 or 3 days, they released a new episode with an update. And that's cool when it's something is so real and present and recent that you can get updates, and you know, it just adds these new layers, and it's just so good. And also what I've just written here in the sense of how it's a little bit is that it's speaking about patients dying. So it's just a bit like a bumpy landing when you hear about that on planes or whatever, and anyway, on to the next point of my lovely page of notes. Through ads of Dr. Death, I looked up Legal Wars. So they obviously, during the advertisement, spoke about Legal Wars, a new podcast, blah blah blah. On the 15th of March, I said, okay so far, but nowhere near as good as Dr. Death. I have since stopped listening to it. I did listen to a few more episodes and I did somewhat enjoy it. Some I enjoyed more than others, but it just wasn't hitting the spot the same way as Dr. Death was. And the advertisements in Legal Wars drove me mad. It was just really like standard American, big, loud, annoying. And I get that they need to be paid. I get that, of course, but it did get a little bit repetitive and slightly less fun listening experience. And I've written here, presenter sounds too detached from the stories, and it's not as well presented as Dr. Death. Still quite interesting though. So I think the problem with that is that, I don't know about the presenter bit, but I remember thinking Dr. Death, it had so much evidence and so many clips of people speaking of things that had been written or whatever, and it was so factual, and I loved that. And Legal Wars was a little bit less like that. It didn't feel as real or authentic. I also started listening to Crime Junkie a couple of weeks after this, I think. But again, it just wasn't doing it for me. I think it was just the presenters. No offense to them, but they were, again, very, like, American. I have nothing against Americans or anything, but just having that in your ear all the time could be a bit much for me. Some people might enjoy it. I prefer my British podcast. Dr. Death was American though. So that's everything I've written on this page. I'm just gonna have a quick flick through to see if I did another page anywhere, and then I will be back. Okay, I haven't found anything new in this notebook, but I did see a lot of stuff. This is the equivalent of my diary from this year. I didn't use it as a diary, but it has everything. So I'm definitely going to enjoy looking at that in the future, I'm sure of it. Podcasts wise though, from, I don't know at which point, at some point I found out about Dear Hank and John, so I listened to that. I used to just listen to the ones that came out as they came out and at night. And then at some point I was running out of episodes, so I went all the way back to number 1 and worked my way up, which was great at the time. But now, during lockdown, I have nothing to listen to. But I just find them great. I put them on at night and I can just stop thinking. I just listen to them, they're sort of on in the background, and that's it. I can go to sleep. Usually. Sometimes that doesn't work and then I put on Star Kid. Anyway, so that's Dear Hank and John. Then I also listened to The Good Place, the podcast, and I think the only 2 episodes I haven't seen... Oh, there's a couple. I haven't listened to any of the bonus episodes, which I definitely will do at some point. On from that, I found out about Brooklyn Nine-Nine, the podcast. Now, I have not watched season 6 yet, so I started listening to the very first episode, and at the end, they reveal a very small little factoid about season 6, and it shouldn't affect anything. But at that point I realised I'm going to wait until I've seen the entire series and then I'll go and listen. I also found out about 13 Minutes to the Moon, which I watched, listened to 1 episode, and then it just wasn't doing it for me at the time. It didn't engage me, which is silly because I love astronomy and I'm sure I will come back to it. But one day. I also listened to 99% Invisible, which I think I was encouraged by Dear Hank and John. And again, some episodes are better than others. And I think that's everything. So really, what I'm looking for is another podcast similar to Dr. Death, but I haven't yet found anything that quite hits it the same way. Oh, and then I also started listening to Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls, because they do podcasts, well, a podcast version. I tried to listen to them. They didn't help me fall asleep. They just kept me up. But they are interesting, of course. So there we go. That's my podcast life. Please let me know any recommendations down below, and I will see you guys tomorrow with a video that I'm going to film today because I've thought of another topic just by looking through that notebook. Sorry. To myself, actually. Anyway, bye!